y'all. Welcome. Today we're going to be doing the live book launch for Pringle Prawn by author Michael Scott Clifton. Everybody say yay! We have some special guests with us today joining out of the fun of the party, and that's going to include author Jeffrey Lee, author Stone Key, author Eric Staples, and author Mike Wiggleton will be popping in about 30 minutes. So we'll be able to add him to the pack. Each of us are going to be bringing with us a special surprise. All you have to do is comment during this live stream, and we will be able to get you guys entered into the Wheel of Names. And at the end, we're going to spin it and find out who wins. Before we start, why don't we go ahead and go around, starting with Mike, and then Jeff, and then Stone Key, and then Eric. A little bit about yourself.
So my name's Mike Clifton. I write under the pen name Michael Scott Clifton. I generally write science fiction and fantasy. And I have 8 books published, and of course, the latest of which is Pringle Prawn, which we're introducing tonight. And also with CJ, part of a blog podcast, Book World, The Great Escape. And I'm also a speaker. I've spoken to a number of different organizations and book clubs, and also part of a fantastic critique group, which includes Stone Key, Gary, and we have a great time. And great thing about the critique group is we get to read each other's work, so we get sneak peeks ahead of time, and that's all about me.
Okay, Jeffrey.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Lee. All my works are published under that same name. I currently I have 2 fantasy books out right now, young adult / adult. I'm working on some science fiction stuff as well, hoping to get that out in the near future. I'm hoping down the road to be a multi-genre author, starting with science fiction and fantasy, because that's where my comfort level is at. It's what I grew up with and where most of my ideas have stemmed from. But I want to expand beyond that at some point. But like I said, right now, I have 2 books out. The second of which just came out a few weeks ago on August 11th, and that is the Empire of Strings duology. Yeah, that's about what I got. Thanks.
Awesome. Stone?
Hi, my name's Gary Merrifield. I write under the pen name of Stone Key. I have a couple book series out now. First one is the Modern Warlock. I think, mages, warlocks, wizards in real time. I have a background in IT, so even my wizards and warlocks have a data center of their own. My second series, The Afterlife of Kai Dotson, deals with heaven, hell, and death. There's actually a bit of a crossover with my first series. The third book of that series, Death's Demon, is hopefully going to be coming out in about 2 months. Along with that, I also weave foster dogs for a rescue organization. And so I've been writing short stories about them, and we're getting ready to start doing a series out there with the episodes about the various foster dogs we've had and their adventure. Along with that, we're getting ready, hopefully next month, to launch our own podcast on a series about, so you want to write a book. So it talks about the kind of the start of the journey through writing your own book. And as FYI for anybody, I live just outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Nice. Eric?
Eric Staples. I wrote my first novel. It published in October of 2022. Is that right? 2022. The Leash Protocol. I am currently writing the second. It's going to be a 5-book series. I am also working on another series that the working title for right now is Arthur's Prison. It's science fiction. It's kind of where we live, me and my kid brother. I have a writing partner, my little brother. He lives in Virginia. So we write and send emails back and forth and harass each other pretty regularly. I am a full-time teacher when I'm not a writer. That's the short and skinny.
Very cool. Well, I'm author CJ Peterson. I co-host Book World, The Great Escape with author Michael Scott Clifton over there. It's every Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. I'm an author, blogger, podcaster, publisher, and speaker. I have 19 novels, one of which just launched last weekend, and that is the Tested by Fire standalone book where a fire marshal falls in love with an arsonist. I have multiple series, multiple genres. I kind of don't like to fit into any box. I kind of tossed the box years ago, so it's already gone. And I'm in 3 anthologies, and I have 2 children's books, and that's me pretty much in a nutshell. So, Mike, congratulations about Pringle Prawn. Can
Thank
you
you.
take just a few minutes to tell us about what Pringle Prawn is about?
So I knew I was going to get asked that question. So Gary, actually, what's that?
Try not to give away too much.
Well, Gary helped with the blurb, and Gary, thank you so much because, as everyone in my critique group knows, blurbs are my kryptonite. And so I thought what I would do is I would read the blurb and the backstory blurb, if that's not too blasé. And the tagline is "Move over, Tinkerbell. There's a new fairy in town." Ben Hastings, this is just going to give you a short down and dirty. Ben Hastings' world is turned upside down when Pringle, a 6-inch forest prawn, zooms into his life. Armed with a supercharged attitude and a pouch full of fairy dust, Pringle saves Ben from a vengeful Russian mobster and a demented HOA president. But things really get out of hand when Pringle begins to grow larger, and with it, her feelings for Ben. So you can think of Pringle as a modern, more supercharged version of Tinkerbell with a whole lot less inhibitions than Tinkerbell.
Sounds interesting.
And in so doing, she causes a lot of problems for the main character, Ben, because apparently Pringle has no break in the things that she does.
Gotcha. Now, what made you come up with that idea?
You know, I actually wrote the intro to this years ago, and but I had other book projects ahead of it. And you know, as you know, CJ, and as you know, Gary, you know, finishing the Conquest of Vale series, I was going to do that before I finished that, before I moved on to the other projects. And I've always intended to go back to Pringle Prawn because I like the concept of fairies. In the books I write, I kind of like the concept of going back between a magical world and a contemporary world and seeing what happens if you take a contemporary character and put him in a magical world, or you take a magical character and put him in a contemporary world and see what happens from that point forward. You know, and sink or swim, fish out of water, you know, funny things happen. And so Pringle, I just had the idea, what would happen if you took a 6-inch fairy called a prawn? In case anyone out there is wondering, a prawn, I use that word because, first of all, it goes with Pringle prawn. But prawn is a version of shrimp. Shrimp and prawn, in their, one of the meanings is small or tiny. So that's where I got the word Pringle Prawn. But anyway, I was just fascinated with the idea of what happens if you take a tiny little fairy, put her in a context where she saves the life of a contemporary character who has never been in a magical setting, doesn't know what to do. And then, as luck would have it, she follows him back to his world. And what happens from that point forward. And then add a little romance to it. Part of the story of Pringle is that the longer she is in Ben Hastings, the main character's world, the less she is of hers. And her magic begins to fade. And as it begins to fade, she starts to grow larger. And as she grows larger, her feelings for Ben start to grow stronger and more intense. And so there's a little bit of romance in it as well. And so the story of magic, it's a story of you know, it's really funny because it's probably the most lighthearted or funny book that I've written so far, even though it does have some very dark and dour themes to it, because you can imagine, you know, the kind of situations you could get in with a fairy that can use fairy dust to change things and do things, and again, who has no way of knowing how to navigate in a modern world coming from a forested magical world. So the possibilities are endless in terms of the different storylines you can draw from that. So it was a fun book for me to read. It was really, really fun. And the thing I liked about it most, and I don't know, Gary, you may appreciate this, is I've been doing books with our critique group for years now, and I think it's an honest assessment to say that I've probably gotten more positive feedback from the critique members on this book than I've gotten in any previous book I've written so far. And that's not to say that I haven't gotten positive feedback. It's just I think I've gotten a better vibe from them on this book. So I'm kind of excited about that as well.
Very cool. So it sounds really awesome. What are you going to be giving away today?
So signed copy, autographed copy of Pringle Prawn and or an ebook as well, free ebook of Pringle Prawn.
Awesome. So in order to win any of these prizes, you just need to comment during this live book launch and will be entered into the Wheel of Names. Let's head on over to Jeffrey Lee. Jeffrey, can you tell us a little bit about your actual books and what you're giving away today as well? Kind of go a little bit more in depth of what you went into earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, the Empire of Strings duology, which is Empire of Strings, The Space Between Souls, is book 1. Empire of Strings, The Bonding of Light, is book 2. It's a YA fantasy duology. It is complete. I'm not intending to add any more books in that particular that particular series. However, it is part of what I intend to become a shared universe of stories. It's the first entry in that, but it is a complete story. And I'll talk about it in just a second. But both of those books are the 2 ebooks that I will be giving away during this, or have up for giveaway. So you can get, so anyone who might be interested in it could get the complete story out of that. So the series is about a world where there are people called tracers who have the ability to look into the memories and souls of other people, and they can make essentially make copies of those memories into their own souls, which they can then project in front of them as realistic illusions. The story is about all of the, I guess you would call it, the invasions of privacy that can come with having those abilities. There's a lot of positives and negatives that can come with that. There's a lot of people who will abuse that, and there are a lot of people who will try to defend that ability. The main character of the story, Emmeline, she is the daughter of a famous tracer in their home, who is widely considered a hero. Part of her journey is trying to live up to the expectations of being the daughter of someone so famous when she just wants to be herself. But she gets drawn into her father's past mistakes and has to deal with the consequences of his actions from the past, which is also delved into in the story. I toyed around a lot with having flashbacks or not having flashbacks in the story, and they ended up being a big part of the story, which was a lot of fun to write. And yeah, the story follows Emmeline most of the time, and she meets several other tracers and non-tracers along the way, and has to navigate learning her abilities along with dealing with people who are much more proficient at them than she is, who want to do harm to her home with them. And there's a lot that comes with that. That's, in a nutshell, what the story is about.
Awesome. So what's next for you?
Next, I'm currently working on a short story collection, some of which will tie into Empire of Strings, and some will tie into the next book that I'm going to write. And that book is tentatively titled The Beat of Broken Wings. It's going to be a sci-fi duology that is, if anyone's familiar with Brandon Sanderson's series Skyward, it's inspired by that. It's about fighter pilots, but in a science fiction setting. Top Gun, but on an alien world.
Very cool.
That's the next big project I want to work on. Beyond that, I have a lot of plans. I don't know exactly which one will be after that.
Sounds like a plan. So where can people find you online?
The link that just popped up on the screen is the best place to find me. My Facebook page, which is author Jeffrey Lee, and my personal page on Facebook has all the same information too. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, but I am admittedly not very active on those platforms. I need to get better at marketing on other platforms other than Facebook. That's where I'm mostly active to get all the current information out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Cool. So we're heading on down to Stone Key, aka Gary.
Hey, oh, thanks. So yes, once again, my name, pen name Stone Key. My real name's Gary Merrifield. As a quick FYI, all my books are on Amazon, which I'm going to talk about in here a second, and several of them are also on Audible, on audiobooks on Audible. So I started my writing career 6-7 years ago, and actually it was one of those where, as a background, I always have a little bit of trouble getting to sleep. And, you know, I envy all those folks that put their head in a pillow and boom, they're out like a light. That's just not me. So one night I was reading a book about mages and all this, and it was in that part of the book where, you know, the evil villain has just succeeded. They killed somebody or they captured somebody, whatever it is, and then and it looks like they're unstoppable like that. And then that was about the end. And that's where I said, okay, I need to get to sleep. But when I got to sleep, I just didn't like the fact that I left at that moment. You know, it was like, I don't want to leave with a bad guy winning. So in my mind, I created a character that defeated this villain, and that character became Jason, and he became the main character of a book series called The Modern Warlock. And so when I started writing it, I wanted it to be a lot about, or I wanted to be basically kind of write from my perspective. So, and you know, so here's a person that's, and he's already, you know, he's in his 40s. He's already had a wife and kids and all this, but he's had a lifelong dream of being magical. And so, but you know, most stories, they find out as a kid. They're oftentimes they've lost their parents, whatever it is, and they find out they're magical. And the kid, he doesn't find out until that he's magical until later in his life. So he finds out he's magical, ends up going to instead of going to magical school, he goes to basically warlock boot camp, where survival is just the primary goal. Be able to live day to day is the primary goal, because that training there can kill you. And so through there, he basically deals with some of his obstacles, builds his team, and gets through magical boot camp, and then goes on from book 1 to book 2 to form a team and then move on to battle the forces as it goes along. So he's very much a character that I can identify with. Most of the story is based on either, you know, in a magical realm or on Earth. And that's kind of like the way I like to write, is basically kind of combine the two, basically introduce magical realism, you know, and then maybe even take historical events and kind of twist them a little bit by saying, you know, if you throw a little magical influence in there, it changes the way you perceive that event. There are 3 books in that series, and like I said, they're all on Amazon. The second series, which there's 2 books out now, and the third, like I said, is coming out soon, is called The Afterlife of Kai Dotson. And it's a little different because it's about heaven, hell, and death, and the battle between the 3. And it's in modern times, in a modern day. And so Kai Dotson, who's the lead character, he died about 100 plus years ago, and he ended up, after his death, went to work for Death. Now, in my series, it's Death is his own entity. He's not like like an angel of heaven. He's his own entity. Hey, Cassie, as FYI for you, I've written 5 books so far, with 6 coming out and 2 more in the works. Thank you for the question. That's great to see people interacting. So Kai basically is Death's kind of right-hand man. Kai deals with, you know, wayward celestials, magical beings, or basically the dirty stuff that Death needs taken care of. If something goes wrong, Kai is sent out. Now Kai is a little bit, if you've ever seen the series Lucifer, He has a little bit of that Lucifer, that kind of that freelance devil may care type of personality, but he's in death. And his main job, though, besides all tracking down there, is keeping the balance between heaven and hell. And of course, he has people who work with both heaven and hell. And what I like to do is I'd like to take a little bit of a different perspective. So heaven isn't as quite as perfect as, maybe say the Bible may put it out to be, and hell may not be as quite as bad as the Bible makes it out to be. But the thing is, though, is that the basics are there. So it's a lot of fun. And it's really, like I said, it takes a slightly different perspective of things. And so I always tell everybody that if you are very, very devout, Christian, you might want to take a second thought before reading that series. But the thing is, though, is that it's a good guy. It's all good. It's just a slightly different perspective of things.
So death is kind of more neutral.
Death basically there is to keep the balance between heaven and hell, trying to keep them from annihilating each other. Because in reality, if one annihilates the other, both are gone. It's kind of a yin and yang, a balance there. And that's what death is there about, and that's what he tasked Kai for, is to making sure that the two are balanced. Now we have reapers and other types of things that are there to handle when people die and escorting them to taking their souls for processing. But it's kind of a little bit of a different perspective. Through the process, death is Kai initially works for death, but then when someone's killing God's top angels, God brings him over and makes him an angel to help him track down this murderer. And then when there's potential for war in hell, death loans Kai out to Satan to help prevent war in hell. So Kai kind of gets to make the full circle. That's book 3. There will be 4 books in that series. There's going to be at least 4 books in the Modern Warlock series. Along with that, like I said, I had the dog, the foster dog short stories, and then I'm also working on a new series where he's a ex-FBI agent that used to be the FBI's main guy. If you were a sociopath, if you were a serial killer, he was the one assigned to catch you. But he had kind of a paranormal event, ended up leaving the FBI, and now he uses his new paranormal skills to talk to the souls of those that were murdered to track down their killers. And that book has just started. It's probably won't be out until at least next year. So,
Awesome.
and
Casey
then I'm sorry.
Casey said there were really interesting topics. She wouldn't mind reading anything from any of you guys so far that she's heard. And also said everyone loves a good murder.
Exactly. Everybody loves a good murder. And then I guess just to wrap it up, I'm going to be giving, I don't know if you can able to see with my green screen like this, but I'm going to be giving away a signed copy of Death's Arbiter.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Again, all you have to do to be entered into the Wheel of Names is to comment during this live broadcast, and we will spin it at the end to find out who wins what. Heading up next is Eric Staples. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you got going on, and people can find you online.
Hi, I'm Eric Staples. Look at that, authorstaples.com. Yeah, that's me. That's mine and my brother's website. I also have an Instagram that I think is Author Staples on Instagram, and it's full of blurbs and pretty pictures and really cool crafted art. I'm also on TikTok under Storyteller Staples, where I give silly writing advice. It does not take itself very seriously. I think my advice today was unsolicited advice. Don't take advice from strangers you meet on the internet or just making things up. But I've written 1 book and I'm working on 2 more. The first book we have written was The Leash Protocol. It takes place kind of post World War III. The ultimate instrument in a war that lasted 20 years turned out to be psychic humans. They were the most potent interrogators, and they were the most potent weapons on the battlefield. So society, that's awesome, actually.
She follows you.
I got sidetracked. They turned out to be the most potent weapons in the war. But with that great power also came great paranoia. And so society demanded that they be locked away and kept away from society. So this sort of enigmatic entity named the Father came out and said, fine, you want all psychics to go away? I can help them go away, but you're going to do it on my terms. And they were basically too powerful a force to argue with. So society only came up with one significant rule, and that's all psychics had to be tethered. Somehow they had to be maintained and controlled. And the way they managed to do that was with a process called leashing, where they take a human being of compatible personality and nature, and they merge them at the psychic level, where if something happens to one, it happens to the other. The ultimate job of a leash, it's one of the taglines in the book, is the purpose of a leash is to protect. If that which is leashed is weak, it is for their protection. If that which is leashed is strong, it is for the world's. So yeah, and psychics vary in power from level ones called ticklers, who can read thoughts, but they can't delve very deep, to level twos called level ones are mumblers, level twos are ticklers. Ticklers can delve deeper into your brain. Level threes are soldiers. They can throw a car at you. And level fours are sort of your god tier. They are extraordinarily powerful. There have only ever been 8 documented in the world, and only one of them remains unleashed. An energy sink named Alicia, and she is considered the most dangerous psychic who has ever lived, and she's only 16 years old. Our other main protagonist is a mercenary that works for an organization called Titan. His name is Tobias Marshall. He is a survivalist. He is not kind. He is very much an anti-hero. He puts his own survival and his own well-being far above that of other people's. He ends up in a skirmish very, very early on in his in one of his missions, and he gets gravely injured. He's rescued by members of the academy, and they take him back, where they nurse him back to health on the condition that he not leave under sort of almost pain of death. So this survivalist who refuses to be tethered and refuses to do anything that puts his own life or freedom in jeopardy now has the option of either join the academy or potentially die. So that two needs thing that all good protagonists have. That's the short and skinny. That book is finished, and we have been selling. It's available on Amazon and at all major retailers. It's available on Kindle, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. It's in lots of libraries. It's in my school library. I'm currently working on the sequel for that. My brother, who is also my writing partner, is that's right.
I brought Eric's book at an ETWA meeting, not my usual genre, but it piqued my interest, and it's really interesting.
Cool. We're working on the sequel to that. My brother is writing a book series in the same world. He really wanted to explore what it was like to be a human, a normal, regular human who existed in the age of psychics and leashes and all of these superhumans. So he said, okay, well, how does your average Joe or your sort of average Joe go about living his life when all of these extraordinary human beings exist? And I thought it was such an interesting concept that we started writing it. We are currently in the editing process of that book, and we hope to have it finished by October and released before next year sometime.
Casey says, I feel like death and authors are just a thing. Y'all can't not kill someone or almost do it.
We do be killing a lot of people.
You know what? Some people just need killing. That's all I'm gonna say.
Some people do need some killing. You're absolutely right.
I'll leave it there. It's a thing. So awesome.
But that's about the short and skinny for me.
So what are you giving away?
I am giving away one signed copy of paperback copy of the Leash Protocol.
Awesome. Cool. Again, to be entered into the Wheel of Names, all I have to do is comment. So far, Casey, Nancy, and Trevor are all 3 entered into it. All I have to do is comment at the end. We'll spin it and find out who gets to win all these really cool prizes. So Mike Wigington is not here yet, so I'll go ahead and... Oh, no, there he is. He just got here. Nice timing. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
literally just said Mike Wigington hasn't gotten here yet, and there you are. Did you hear your name or something?
No, I was just trying to get home as fast as I could and get on.
Well, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome. So we were talking about basically, Casey says people go the bye-bye, got it. We were talking about death and authors being a thing. Each one of us has already so far gone through it, except for me and Mike, to dive into our backgrounds. But can you tell people who you are, what you do, and what you're giving away?
Yes, I am Michael Wigington. I write epic fantasy, and I'm giving away an ebook of my debut novel, The Bloodstone Reckoning.
Okay. Can you tell people about your actual work?
Oh, my work?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. So I spent 33 years with the city of Longview in municipal service, and then I retired because I got tired of working for the city. Now I deliver parts for O'Reilly's for side money.
There you go.
It's fun.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your books?
Yeah, I am highly influenced by guys like C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, of course, and Bernard Cornwell. And I'm, so I write fantasy. Cornwell writes historical fiction, but I didn't want to have to do that much research, so I chose fantasy. It's a lot of there's a lot of work that goes into historical fiction. It's just like, okay, wait. And I like the fantastical nature of fantasy, that sense of the mystery and magic, so there's that too. And I'm big. I grew up with like Arthurian legend, and you read the stories of King David, and so I grew up with all of that, and that's what I like. I like to write heroic fantasy where there's a hero, there's a clear-cut hero, there's a clear-cut bad guy, and there generally probably won't be a lot of gray areas with these, kind of. I don't know how you would put it, but sometimes the bad guy you can try to get where you feel sorry for him, and that sympathy for the devil, I guess, kind of thing. But I don't like to delve into that a whole lot.
Awesome. Well, what are you giving away? You said it was Bloodstone Reckoning. Can you tell people about that series, those books?
Yeah, well, so far there's 2. I've written 2. I'm going to write 3 total. I'm 115,000 words into the third one. So, but that's a kind of, it's a coming of age fantasy with some Slavic and Irish mythology mixed in. It's about a young girl named Tabitha Milhouse who discovers, of course, she's magic born, and then there's a warlock looking for an ancient relic, but if he gets a hold of it, it's going to unleash chaos upon the land, and it's up to the protagonist and her mentor to keep him from it. And so that's kind of a quick breakdown of what I write, or what I'm with those. That's my biggest novels. I got 2 novels, and then I've got 2 novellas that are also related to to those 2 novels. Mm-hmm. One of them is a prequel that is about 1,000 years before, and then the other one is probably 500 or 600 years before.
Cool.
Awesome. I read the Bloodstone Reckoning, and it's an excellent book. It's a great debut novel, and I'm still waiting for the second one. Mike, you got that one done?
Yeah, that one's been out since December.
Okay, what's the name of your second novel?
The Darkness Rising.
Darkness Rising. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So, what's next for you?
Oh, after I finish this, I've got hopefully it'll be a series. I've got a book started. I'm probably 35,000 words into it. It's called The Sword of Venganza, and it's a revenge story. And the protagonist is a retired mercenary, and that's what I'm going to be working on next.
Awesome. Trevor says looking forward to reading it.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Very cool. So those who are just joining us, make sure to comment in the comments and you'll be entered into the Wheel of Names to win any of these prizes. We have a pretty good list so far. Go ahead and jump over. I'm going to go ahead and do mine real quick. I'm author CJ Peterson. As I mentioned, I have 19 novels. I'm in 4 anthologies and I have 2 children's books. I'm a multi-genre, multi-award-winning author. I do not like to. Casey said that Mike, your son's gruesome. Tag gruesome. She's down for it. I don't like to stay in one genre. So I basically flip my genres to try to, put a little more spice into it. And so that I'm never sedate and keep going in the same thing. So I have everything. They're all Christian fiction, but I tell people it's not your mama's Christian fiction. I have everything from supernatural / paranormal with angels and demons on this plane of existence. Mom Birilla says hello. I have, and that's the Team Angel series, and that has the Grace Restored series, which is 5 books, Holy Flame Trilogy, which is 3. There's a standalone Strength from Within, and then there's a set of 4, which is the Divine Legacy series, and then it's wrapped up with Christmas Angels. And in that particular series, the characters actually cross over storylines. So you get a little bit more of a different character's story in a different series. So it's kind of cool. You get to kind of build onto it if you follow them all. And then I have the Sands of Time trilogy, which is what I call it's definitely sci-fi and it's children with abilities. So I say it's kind of like Stranger Things minus the Mind Flayer stuff meets X-Men. And basically Professor Noah Roth is trying to generate this specific gene in the children to try to get them to have gifts. And he finally succeeds. And when he does, there's 4 and the moms die of natural causes. Casey says, can't be everyone's Christian fiction. Everyone dies. Not everyone. But when they die, it's a glorious death.
That's the way you should go out.
Exactly. So the first one's called A Point in Time, and I say things start blowing up, and then they kind of start ratcheting it up to exploding and race against time, and then they go nuclear in out of time. And basically, it's the kids trying to get the other siblings before the professor hides them. Mommy says, laugh out loud, Casey. Then I have a time travel one. So Mike, as you mentioned, historical fiction. This one, they travel back in time to change their family line on purpose because their family line stops with this last person trip and he goes back to get his great-great-grandmother and they go back to try to change their family line, hoping that they're going to continue to exist afterwards. Jazz says, yes, great series. Thank you, Jazz. And then I have, let's see. Oh, Tested by Fire that was just launched on September 5th. And that one is where a fire marshal falls in love with an arsonist before he realizes that she is the arsonist. So a lot of it's sci-fi. Tested by Fire was my first tiptoe into just romance, and I had to pull the sci-fi out of me. The sci-fi geek in me almost rebelled, but I held firm. So there's sci-fi in that one, but it's pretty much everything else. So I like to kind of sprinkle a lot of stuff into mine. So that's mine. And you can find my stuff at cjpetersonwrites.com. Again, for those who are watching and just joining us, make sure to leave a comment. And if you're commented, you're entered into the Wheel of Names where you can win special prizes brought by each one of the authors today. Mike, we've talked about Pringle Prawn. Can you tell us a little bit about your other books?
So again, 8 books are published. I have 3 standalone novels: The Treasure Hunt Club, The Janus Witch, and Edison Jones and the Anti-Grav Elevator. The Treasure Hunt Club is about a down-on-his-luck young man who discovers a magical book called The Book of Lost Treasures, which can find anything that has ever been lost. In The Janus Witch, it's when I first started went from a medieval setting to a contemporary setting, and it starts out with a medieval coven of witches, a very vicious, murderous coven of witches, which escape witch hunters and the portal of magic they create slingshots them through time to present-day East Texas, and it leaves the main character critically injured in the passage, so much so she suffers complete amnesia. And then when she recovers, she falls in love with a young man whose character and personality is her exact opposite. He's kind and compassionate, and she falls in love with him. Think nature, nurture, and how that would work. in this situation. And so everything's rocking along until she suffers flashbacks to her previous life. You have to read the rest of the book to get the rest of the story. And then Edison Jones was kind of inspired by a book series called Tom Swift, which was a book series I read when I was a kid growing up, and is very similar to the Hardy Boys, except that it was Tom Swift was a young genius inventor. And so it's been out of adoption for many years now. And my 21st century version of that is Edison Jones. Edison Jones is a 12-year-old boy genius who invents cool stuff and goes on cool adventures. He's also paraplegic, and he's used his mind and his inventions to overcome his disability. And then the Conquest of the Veil series is a fantasy series. I would consider it sword and sorcery, epic fantasy, high fantasy, very much has a coming of age theme to it as well. And it is a 4-book series. And that was, for those of you who are familiar to previous podcasts, the 4 books were the condensed version of my previously 1 million word manuscript that I thought at the time I wrote it, which was 12, 15 years ago, the normal sized of a document of a typical book. And so imagine the work that went into taking 1 million words and putting it into four books. But it's actually an awesome series. I will say the one thing that two of my standalone books, The Treasure Hunt Club, The Janus Witch, and now Pringle Prawn, have in common is they do share a minor character who serves a function roughly equivalent if you've ever seen Tales from the Crypt and you knew the Crypt Keeper who introduced the tales. Okay, well, the character in these 3 standalone novels is Hank Harper, who's a 4-foot tall dwarf or little person who owns a very unusual antique and oddity shop. And somehow the characters who are become the main part of the story of each of these books somehow run across his path, and he introduces them to a magical object which starts their adventure, if you want to call it that. So and so Pringle Prawn also has a Hank Harper attachment there. And again, if you've read Treasure Hunt Club or The Janus Witch, then you will recognize Hank in Pringle Prawn.
Awesome. Sounds like fun. Casey said, and this is to all y'all that are here, y'all are making me feel like I need to actually start reading again.
Good.
Good.
You guys are bringing it because she's pretty picky. I promise you that. So that sounds good. Okay, so quick overview of Pringle Prawn one more time for those who maybe have tuned in a little bit late. Nancy says, I look forward to reading Pringle. The cover is beautiful and the blurb is intriguing. So Mike, just give a quick brief overview of it and we'll go ahead and spin the wheel of names to see who wins all the cool prizes. Before he gets there though, if you want to still be entered, make sure to leave a comment and you'll be entered into the wheel of names.
So just imagine a character from a contemporary setting or world, in this case in East Texas, who by accident happens to drop into a magical world, which among other things contains fairies. And the fairy helps the character return to his world. And unbeknownst to him, she returns with him. And it causes and it is a very disruptive force and causes a lot of hilarious incidents with her and with him. Also has a growing, I guess, romance story to it because, you know, they both form an attachment to each other in the course of the story. But very funny. It's a funny story. It's an adventurous story. And I'll say this too. I write stories, and this is one of them. Sometimes you just like to entertain. People want to escape, and that's the kind of book this is. You're not going to be wiser at the end of it. You're not going to know you're not going to be a more worldly person, but I do feel like you'll be entertained, and it'll leave you with a good feeling. It's a good story.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go around, and each one of you are going to have your website down below as we spin for what you got going on. We're going to start with Jeffrey Lee's. So, Mr. Jeffrey Lee, what exactly are you going to be giving away again?
I will be giving away a free copy of both ebooks for both of my books, The Empire of Strings Duology, books 1 and 2.
Awesome. And that is going to be going to... Yeah, that was close. Rondi. Congratulations, Rondi. You got 2 new ebooks. Okay, and then the next one is... Next one's going to be going for Eric Staples. Let me find you here. Okay, Eric, what are you giving away?
A paperback copy, signed paperback copy of the Leash Protocol.
Awesome. Here we go.
Oh no.
To Nancy.
I think poor Nancy already has one.
Does she? Okay, then why don't we go ahead and respin it then? Since she already has it. If it goes to Nancy again. Jazz. Okay, got it. Yeah, I'll get that one. Because you're right, Nancy did say she already had it. Okay. And then we're heading over to, let's see, it looks like Stone Key is next on our list. What are you giving away, sir?
I'm giving away a signed copy of Death's Arbiter.
Okay. That's going to Nancy. She is bound and determined to get a book tonight. That's
Yeah. Now, I think Nancy might have one of my books. If she does, I can switch it with another one of my other books.
okay. So Nancy, make sure to catch that in case you are. Then we're gonna head over to Mike. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add everybody's name back in again because I happen to know that we already have that book in our house as well.
You know what? If that's the case, then I'll just make it book 2 instead of book 1. How about that?
Okay, that'll work. And
Okay.
I'm going to go to there it goes. It goes to Casey.
Okay. Did you want book 1 or book 2 or both?
Because we have book 1.
Huh?
We have book 1. So
Okay.
that means that Trevor gets Pringle Prawn. Yay.
Yay.
He's probably gonna want the paperback. So Mike, when you get that, you can pass that on to Trevor.
Okay.
So congratulations. Here's the lowdown. Since okay, Trevor gets paperback of Pringle Prawn. Mommy gets the ebook of 2 ebooks of Empire of Strings and Space Between Souls. The Empire of Strings, Space Between Souls, and Bonding of Light. Jazz gets a paperback of Leash Protocol. Nancy gets the signed copy of Death's Arbiter. And Casey gets the ebook of The Bloodstone Reckoning. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of us in to find out who gets mine.
Does Casey already have that one, or does she want the Darkness Rising?
She wants book 2.
Book 2. Okay, that's the Darkness Rising.
Okay. This girl is going to get an ebook of Chain Reaction and Tested by Fire. Everybody wins. Oh, sorry, I did not have that live. It went to Stone Key. So, Gary, you're going to be getting the other one. You're going to be getting the ebook of Chain Reaction and Tested by Fire. So, everybody walks away with a little bit of something. So, really quick, go through. Mike, where can people find you online?
www.michaelscottclifton.com.
And on your handle for social medias?
Facebook is author Michael Scott Clifton. I think it's author Michael Scott Clifton on Twitter, and
Author MS Clifton.
Author MS Clifton, and
It's author MS Clifton.
on Instagram,
Author MS Clifton.
author MS Clifton. Yeah, there it is.
Got it. So his website, and author MS Clifton to find
So
Mike.
you're asking the wrong person.
Apparently. You can find me under CJ Peterson at cjpetersonwrites.com. Most of my handles are either authoress CJ or authoress _ CJ, depending upon which one was taken. Gary, how do people find you online?
Try that one again. As you can see, my webpage is stonekeybooks.net. I'm also on Facebook with Stone Key, and also on Twitter and Instagram, both as Stone Key.
Awesome. Mike?
fantasyinmyveins.com, and on Facebook, Michael Wigington Author, and Instagram, Michael Wigington Author.
Awesome. And Jeffrey?
The one on screen, author Jeffrey Lee on Facebook, is definitely the best place to find me. But I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well. Those handles are variations of the same name, either author Jeffrey Lee or Jeffrey Lee author. I'm not one of them. One of them is flip-flopped. I'm not sure which one's which, but yeah, they're all pretty much the same. And my books are on Amazon.
Awesome. Eric?
That's our website. We also are on Instagram, author Eric Staples, I believe, on Instagram, and storyteller Staples on TikTok. If you want, author Eric Staples on Instagram and storyteller Staples on TikTok. If you want some silly, useless funsies advices for the day.
Awesome. Nancy, it's a great program. Really enjoyed hearing from all of the very talented authors. Thank you. And Mombi was laughing at the author MS Clifton. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned in the future to check out any other book launches that will either be part of for Texas Sisters Press or the ones that I'll be helping launch, like, for example, Mr. Mike's. Make sure to check out Pringle Prawn. You can get it 99 cents till midnight tonight. Is that correct, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
On ebook, get it tonight, because otherwise it goes up. Mombi says, congratulations, everyone, and thank you all for awesome giveaways. Make sure to check us out next time. You can find everything regarding Pringle Prawn at author michaelscottclifton.com. See y'all later.